What's up with it, world? It's your boy CBJ. You are tuned into an all-new, brand-new podcast. Coach Rudy is my co-host.
That be me.
So I know you guys know us from the Know It All Sports podcast. Do we want to get into this right now, or do we just want to jump into it?
We gotta get into it right now.
Man, this is...
So our new podcast is called The Champs Podcast,
Yes.
and there's legalities that go to it.
So I know, like, when the season ended for the NFL, we had told you we were going to cover the
Super Bowl and get all into the off season and
But I know you guys were waiting for it. We wanted to do it, but we got legalities that came along.
Yes.
We didn't even know.
The stupid Richard Montgomery.
Yes, Richard Montgomery.
Yeah, we put your name out there, fool.
Richard Montgomery gave us a cease and desist order, told us that we can no longer use the Know It All Sports podcast.
And we called him a liar.
So we had to go to court. We couldn't do it. That's where we've been. It just so happens that we finished everything with court just in time for the new season. So, yeah. And we have a new...
we got a new team member.
Yeah. We're growing. I mean, we were doing good things whenever the season ended. People were starting to really latch on, so we had to expand a little bit. So with the lawsuit also comes a new person to know it's not Richard Montgomery. He does not own us. He does not own our podcast or our voices. We have our own.
But we will not let our producer speak. Not yet.
In due time, he may or may not.
Yeah, we'll tell you who he is. Kyle Neal Matthews.
Kyle Neal Matthews, yes. So, if it sounds really good, thank you, Kyle Matthews.
And if it sounds really bad, it's Kyle Neal Matthews' fault.
You can write your letters to him. But with that being said,
he's still Sleepy J.
And this is still Coach Rudy. And you're still going to get the same nonsensical banter that we gave you all last season. But we have a new season coming on. We got preseason games going on for the NFL. We were going to get into some other sports. So before we jump into the NFL, because I know that's what you're really here for, we're going to touch some other sports. Where are we going to start with?
Actually, we're going to start with the NFL.
I thought we were going to end on the NFL.
We are.
Okay.
We're going to go NFL, not quite NFL, back to NFL.
Okay. You don't want to start with the boxing just to get it out the way?
No.
Okay.
Because I'm mad. I'm mad at the stupidity. And that starts with all the bashing on Ezekiel Elliott.
Yes. I forgot about that. Yeah. Fucking fuck.
Yep. I co-signed that sentiment. Look, so whether you're wanting to talk about Ezekiel Elliott not being elite today or not being amongst the elite of all times, you're wrong. And that goes to most of the national media and some of the local Dallas media.
Yes.
You are wrong.
So if you listen to the national media or anyone that is bashing Ezekiel Elliott for being not a Zeke of the past, refer to them to this podcast where we can tell them that they're stupid and that they are wrong for their opinions. And we're getting ready to tell you why you are wrong and stupid for your opinions.
Yeah. First off, because you're talking and you shouldn't be.
And we're the champs. So
yeah, so that takes care of that. And no, we did not lose to Richard Montgomery. We just didn't have time to keep messing with
he apparently has wanted. A little bit of money, so
yeah. All right.
We're still a growing podcast, so whatever.
So here's the deal with Zeke. When you look at what he's done all time, right now.
We're going all time. This is beginning of his career to right now.
He's played 6 seasons.
Right.
He's ranked 58th all time in rushing.
Okay.
And 58th all time in rushing touchdowns.
Okay.
So he has 56 rushing touchdowns, 7,400 plus yards, and with that, he is in the same. He's in the middle of the pack of the top 11 rushers of all time.
Okay.
And the reason I go 11 is because 11th is Jim Brown.
Okay.
So for anyone that says, that's stupid, why would you choose 11? Why don't you just stay in the top 10? Because that's what stupid people sound like. Their true stupid voice. So that's why I'm calling you out. So in case people were thinking that, that's why. Jim
Okay.
Brown is oftentimes considered the best running back of all time. So you got to include him in the statistical list.
Okay.
And if you did that through 6 seasons, Ezekiel Elliott is only like 30 yards behind Jim Brown.
Okay.
Okay, he's in that middle of the pack of the rest of the top 10. There was a handful of people that had more yards than him.
Yeah.
A handful that had less.
Yeah.
So through 6 years, he's right in the pack with the best of all time.
Right.
Now, if you were to look at him through 3 years, once again, he's closer to the top of that because he started off really, really hot, but his numbers weren't as great as them in part because he had 6 games taken away from him
Yeah.
with the suspension
Right.
in
right.
his second season. But nonetheless, he still had 4,000 yards and was on the upper half of that list
Right.
of the all-times. But even still, through 6 years, he's still in the middle of the pack of that.
Right.
Now, that's when you're looking all-time.
Okay.
Now, those guys, Jim Brown had 9 years. The rest of those guys had 10, 11, 15 years.
Right.
You know, that type of stuff.
Right.
Now, when you look at modern time,
Okay.
you look at what's happened in the last 6 years.
Okay.
Is Zeke up there? Well, first off, through 6 years, from when Zeke came in till now,
Yeah.
there's not a player who has rushed for more yards in those 6 years.
Okay.
Not Derrick Henry, who came into the same season as him.
Yeah.
Not Gurley. Not anybody else.
Right.
You name him, Alvin Kamara, Christian McCaffrey.
Right.
None of those guys.
Okay.
Now, a lot of people like to say that Christian McCaffrey is better than Zeke.
Yes.
They're like, just look at how he runs. He's better still. I'd
Right.
take him all day over Zeke so long as he don't get hurt. And they always use that qualifier.
Right.
And they say the same for Saquon. They say the same for Alvin Kamara. Well, quite frankly, but those guys get hurt.
Yes.
And any of those guys, you look at their total combined yards, receiving and rushing,
Right.
Zeke has them by over 2,000.
Well, there it goes.
You look at him versus Derrick Henry. He
Right.
has Derrick Henry right now by about 500 yards, 600 yards, something like that in
Yeah.
rushing.
Right.
But when you talk about combined receiving and rushing, he has him by over 1,000 yards.
And again, that goes off of the idea: could Derrick Henry stay healthy, as he's not proven to stay healthy?
Well, I mean, whether you're talking about Derrick Henry staying healthy, whether you're talking about any of these other running backs that you think are great, that people think are great,
Yeah.
look, Dalvin Cook has only played one season fewer
Right.
than Ezekiel Elliott.
Right.
Well, through 5 years,
Yeah.
if you just look at Zeke's first 5 years,
Yeah.
he had more rushing yards than Dalvin Cook
Right.
in his whole 5 years.
Right.
You're like, well, Dalvin Cook got hurt. Okay, once again, that should be a knock on him, not a knock on Zeke.
Right.
Well, you can't compare these other guys who are getting hurt to Zeke who doesn't get hurt. Well, yeah, you really can't. That's my point.
Right.
And then you want to look at Joe Mixon. I love Joe. I said we should draft Joe, even though he came out the year after Zeke, right?
Right.
So Joe Mixon, through his 5 years, Zeke had 6,000 plus. None of these guys had 6,000
Right.
through 5 years. They were 4,000, 3,000, at best 5,000.
Right.
But none of these guys are in the same ballpark as Zeke through that same time period. So all you guys who are saying Zeke doesn't compare to the guys today, no,
Yeah.
he doesn't. He's so much better than them.
You
The
know.
only one that leads him in touchdowns from that group is Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry has more touchdowns than him.
It reminds me of an argument I've heard in the past between Emmett and Barry. And I know off the air, me and you have talked about how you feel Barry is in void because he retired and he didn't play as long or didn't even get close to it because if he decided not to play.
Yeah.
But there was an argument that I remember someone pointing out that if Barry had the line that Emmett had, he would have done that record so much sooner.
That's what everyone says.
And that argument is like quite similar to the argument of, well, if so and so doesn't get hurt, then they could do better than Elliott could. But the fact of the matter is, they do get hurt. The fact of the matter is, Barry Sanders, I don't knock his talent that he had. I will say when they were competing, he was probably more skilled than naturally skilled.
He had more talent.
Yeah.
You want to say he had more talent?
Yeah.
I'll give you that.
Yeah. So we can give you that as far as for Barry. But the fact of the matter is, Emmett worked hard. He stayed in the league. He didn't give up because
he took care of his body.
Have a new producer.
Kyle Matthews is gonna I'm gonna hit him in the throat.
So Kyle Matthews ruined us for a second. So to pick up back where we were saying, Emmett took care of his body, as you were saying,
and that's part of his greatness.
Yeah,
that's part of what it takes to be an all-time great. Now, it's not just a thing of accumulating stats because you played a long time,
right?
Because there are some players that do that. But when you look at greats like Emmitt Smith, look, he played in the same era as Barry,
right?
Each of them won 4 rushing titles,
right?
So when you want to tell me Barry's greater, well, how many rushing titles did he have?
Right.
4. Okay, so how many rushing titles did Emmitt have? 4. Okay, when did they get them? Well, during the same era. What do you mean during the same era? Around the same time? No, literally in the same freaking decade.
Right.
So you can't sit there and say, this guy's so much better than the other. Right. Now, what I can look at the end, the all-time leader in rushing is Emmitt Smith.
Right.
Now, what I can say is, if you're going to argue that Barry would have had more if he had kept playing.
Right.
Okay, Barry's last season, he had 2,038 yards or something like that, right?
Okay.
And then he retired, right? Uh-huh. That's impressive, right?
Right.
Well, I'm going to bring Curtis Martin, who I've said before.
Okay.
So, his second to last year, Curtis Martin had 1,670-something yards.
Okay.
Okay? His last year, which was the following year, he only had 700 and something yards.
Okay.
So he dropped just over 1,000 yards.
Right.
Because running backs can fall off the face of the earth that fast.
Yes. This is something you've talked about, like
running back. Dickerson did the same thing. Like Eric Dickerson was balling. Like every year he was balling. Through his first 6 years, he had 9,900 yards.
Right.
Through 8 years, he was balling. But his last 3 years,
right,
he played a total of 4 plus 6, maybe 18 games in the last 3 years combined.
Right.
And he may not have even gotten 800 yards in those last 3 years combined, because I think one of those years he finished with less than 100 yards because of those injuries. So when you want to sit there and say that it's guaranteed that Barry would have broken that record or had it and put it out of there, no, because Eric Dickerson fell off the face of the earth.
Right.
Curtis Martin fell off the face of the earth.
Right.
Adrian Peterson had 98 yards last year or something stupid like that.
Right.
You can't sit there and tell me it's guaranteed that these guys would have done something more when you can look at the all-time greats at that same position and
see how they declined so bad and so fast.
Jim Brown, the exception.
Yeah.
But once again, you can't sit there and tell me he would have been continuously great because eventually, like Charles Barkley says, Father Time gets them all.
Yeah. There's what I was going to say about Emmett was the fact that he worked hard. Like that was his thing. He, as you said, he set a goal for himself. He went for it. He kept going till he got it. The thing is that I was trying to say before fucking Kyle messed up our situation was that So it's no secret. Barry decided that he was tired of carrying the team because the team.
Tired of losing.
Yeah, he was tired of losing. But Emmett didn't play just those 3 winning championships that they had. Like he played what from till like 2002, right? That
Something like that. Till
Yeah.
I mean, he played for a couple years in Arizona.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like he made it to the turn of the 2000s, beginning of the 2000s, before he hung up his cleats, and all that to say that he was not on a winning Cowboys team for that. Aikman played into the 2000s as well, and we still talk about the 90s whenever they were winning. We weren't talking about 98, 99, 2000, 2001, where the Cowboys were pretty much slowly becoming, I won't say irrelevant, but they were just a team of the past that we always talk about now.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at Emmett, so in Dallas in 2001, he had 1,021 yards.
Okay.
Following year, Dallas again, 975 yards.
Okay.
He gets hurt in Arizona, right?
Yeah.
Only gets 250 yards or whatever, 56 yards.
Right.
Because he's injured. But he comes back for one more year. So he plays in Arizona 2 years, right?
Right.
His last year, played 15 games, 937 yards. That's nothing to sneeze at.
Right.
So when he ends up with his 18,355 yards,
Right.
he did that because it was part of his goal,
Right.
not just to get the record, but he kept playing until he felt it was time to retire.
Right.
Now, you tip the cap to a player who goes out on top,
Right.
And Barry went out on top.
Right.
He got his 2,000 yards. Good for him.
Right.
But also, did he achieve his team goals of winning championships?
Right.
No, he didn't.
Yeah.
I mean, when I compare these two guys, it's clear Emmett had more receiving and total yards rather
Right.
than Barry did.
Yeah.
Barry averaged more yards per season. He did.
Right.
Now, at the same time, during 4 years of his prime, Emmitt
Right.
Smith outran him.
Right.
If you look at who had more Hall of Fame players play on their line,
Yeah.
it was Barry Sanders, not Emmitt Smith.
Right.
Now people say, "Oh yeah, but the Great Wall of Dallas, that was the best line ever." Well,
Yeah.
yeah, and let's just remind you of some things. That line wasn't constant; it changed.
Right.
Eric Williams got hurt in it.
Right.
Nate Newton wasn't considered a great lineman until he was in this situation with all these guys.
Right.
He was a journeyman lineman. So when people want to say, Cowboys, man, you had big Nate Newton. Yeah,
Right.
who people thought sucked before the Cowboys fixed them.
Right.
And then but you had Larry Allen. Yeah, Larry Allen was a pup. He got drafted in 92. Yeah, he was here with all 3 of those Super Bowls. He was a freaking rookie one of those years.
Right.
So
But even this is a side tangent to the whole point of the Zeke argument. The point is, we've seen a similar argument where you wanted to point out another player was better than a Cowboy. Like, there's a lot of bias against Cowboys, and nobody wants to give them the credit for being as good as they are until they go to another fucking team, if they go to another fucking team. Otherwise, they're always going to hold over some sort of weird, well, were they as good as they were supposed to be because they were...
look, so last year, going into the season, national media was saying, "Oh, Cowboys had one of the best lines in the NFL."
Right.
What were we saying? Man, our line's gonna suck.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm not just saying me and you. I'm saying that the local media was saying, "Yeah, this line ain't what it was.
Right.
These guys are question mark. These guys aren't
We're
any
looking
good."
at an old team.
Yeah.
We're not,
So
they're banged up. They're not coming
Just
out.
because somebody else says, "Oh, that's a great line," doesn't mean it's a great line.
Right.
When Tony Romo played, we had a lot of linemen going to Pro Bowls.
Right.
But they were blocking linemen.
Right.
They were good at the run block.
Right.
They weren't good at the pass block.
Right.
Tony Romo was running out there. If you watched
Yeah.
every game, he
Yeah.
was running for his life.
Yeah.
He was afraid he was going to get hurt. And during that time,
He got hurt. No.
he did.
I know,
He got
but-
hurt often.
Yeah.
And that line didn't look as good whenever there was a backup in there because he's the reason that they looked good.
Right.
Just because someone says that they're good
Right.
doesn't mean that they are. And you can't sit there and tell me that we're just bashing on the Cowboys. Oh, but you're making excuses. Well, y'all are making the other excuse.
Right.
You're making the wrong one.
Right. Because one thing I was saying off the air is when we're talking sports, because this is what we're talking, right? We're talking sports. What matters is those fucking stats, because you can't change. Like, it's not like in music where you can just like, well, we're talking about crowd participation, or we're talking about how I felt when I heard this. Like, no, we're talking about a legitimate win or loss situation. Who put the points up? Who's doing the work?
And Zeke is the best at it over his time in the NFL in these 6 years.
And we could say if you guys want to challenge us, we can go where do you want to go with it? You want to say, well, he's not getting the ball as much. You're right, he's not getting the ball as much.
And what was said during his first 3 seasons?
He's getting the ball too much.
And what were they saying? You need to get the ball out of there,
right.
Share the load with somebody else.
Right.
Well, what's been happening these last 3 seasons?
He's been sharing that load.
And what have people been saying? Oh, you got the wrong running back running the ball. You should give it to the other guy.
And what have I been saying? Yeah, nobody's worried about a fucking Tony Pollard. That's why they don't block him the same as whenever they see Ezekiel.
Tony Pollard is not Ezekiel Elliott.
Right. The same thing if you want to argue about when you're playing against the Rams. Who's the fucking guy that they're on defense that you're worried about fucking getting
Aaron Donald.
Yes. And what are you doing? You're double teaming him to try and fucking keep him from getting through your fucking line. The same fucking way you see Ezekiel Elliott, guess what? Somebody
you game plan for him.
Yes.
You don't game plan for the backup running back.
Right. And the other thing, as me and you have said off the air, I don't know if we ever said it, I'm sure we have, but I looked at the stats for Dak. And when we look at the stats for Dak, those first few seasons, he was throwing for about 3,000 yards, which not that bad. Like I'm not
flirting with 4, but yeah.
Yeah. But in the most recent years of those years, we're looking at he went up 1,000 throwing yards. When you go up 1,000 throwing yards,
so if you're switching your offense from passing or from running to passing,
right?
Guess what's going to happen to your run game? It's going to decline.
Right.
That said, last year, the Cowboys were like the 4th or 5th ranked rushing team in the NFL.
Right.
And yet you wanted to criticize that Zeke didn't have enough yards.
Right.
You praised Pollard for having whatever yards he had.
400 and something for the...
No, he probably had 700, 800. But either way, you praise him for that, and then you condemn
Zeke. I do remember this. Last year they were praising him for the few breakout runs that he got, but then he got hurt. So had he not got hurt, y'all would have been saying, but if he never got hurt, he would have passed Elliott. And what was the argument we were saying in the beginning? The fact is that he still got hurt, even as the backup.
Yeah, and the thing is, look, don't make it sound like we're bashing Pollard, but the truth is, Pollard is not as good. Right. Now, you can say he's still good,
right?
But Zeke, his stats are up there with the all-time greats.
Right.
And when you look at Pollard, when he was in the game, getting those the reps early,
right,
and not producing,
right,
everyone was like, well, look how bad the offensive line is playing.
Right.
They weren't talking about, look, Pollard can't do it. And then he has one big old run.
Right.
To make his numbers look different. And like, okay. Now, yeah, he definitely got that run, right?
Right.
So I'm not knocking it. But I'm just saying, the more he plays, then he gets exposed.
Right.
That's what happens with backups.
Right.
Now, let's move on.
Yes.
Because we'll touch this subject several times this year. Denver Broncos. The Dallas Cowboys just played them in a preseason game.
Yeah.
And the Cowboys sucked. And it's because you have sucky backup quarterbacks. You ain't got no receivers. You didn't play Pollard or Zeke. And we sucked.
Yep.
And aside from that, Russell Wilson should be a big boost for Broncos.
Right. Yeah. So that was why we really brought this up. Is the question is, what is Russell like? Does Russell have potential to turn the Broncos around? Which initially I was like, I don't know. Like their line's a little bit old and worn. I was looking at it in that sense that like, yeah, Russell's been around for a while. Yeah, he's got a little bit of experience. And I was sitting there thinking, like, honestly, the receiving core is not as good as it once was. Like, there's just like little things that I could sit here and nitpick on the Broncos for them. But after doing some deeper diving into looking at what he has to go against, he has experience with a bad line, able to still produce decent games, right?
And he's got a bunch of young receivers coming back from injuries that should be ready to go.
And coming back in the sense that like,
Well, Jerry Judy was hurt
well, yeah,
last
yeah, yeah.
year, and now
I'm not talking about the players themselves, but like when you have a
and
quarterback,
I am.
when you got a quarterback that has an actual arm and some accuracy and knows how to extend a play, it makes a difference that'll allow those receivers to actually get the ball. So there's that. But even still, like I looked into their season, and really, if you look at their season, as we said, they're not really gonna have any hard games until we start looking into November. So by that time, you can get yourself into a steamrolling system. Things can start clicking by that time, and give yourself the fucking playoff run. Like we've talked about it off the air, just looking into it because, like I said, I was like, I don't know. I think he might have a rough season, but like when I look to see how the schedule plays out, I don't see any real hard games for him until
November-ish,
yeah,
right? Yeah, I think Denver's in a really
and
favorable
actually
spot.
December, yeah,
Yeah, I think they're in a really favorable spot. I think that they are one of those teams. Look, every year you're gonna have some of those teams that made the playoffs fall out.
right, yeah. We
I think
talked about that last year. Yeah,
Denver's gonna be one of those teams that takes advantage of that. I
Yeah.
think that they'll be in.
right,
We were talking off air last week that Miami looks to be one of those teams that's going to threaten for that spot too.
yeah,
And that the AFC East is really going to be on the uptick.
yep,
So, I mean, we look at those things, and those are our teams that I think you and I are keying in the AFC.
Yeah.
That may turn things around.
Yeah.
The Denver and the Miami team. Those are the teams that you and I seem to be high on right now.
Yeah.
And seem to have a.
And this is going strictly off of paper, like going off on paper. Like obviously, as the games start to roll out, we'll see.
What they're doing. Like one of our concerns about Miami is they did get rid of a really good coach.
Yeah.
And we still have to see what their quarterback does.
Right.
But they got the tools.
They have the tools. Again, on paper, like we did a few years ago when we were talking about Cleveland, on paper there was no reason why they didn't do a solid run. At first, I was like, no, Miami's been really bad. But again, we're really diving into looking at who they've acquired over the last couple years and things like that. They actually have a really solid squad on paper.
Yeah.
So if they get the coaching to get them to be a team and play as a team.
Between them and Denver, I think those are two teams that we're going to talk about a lot more during the season.
Right.
Now, let's transition to Aqib Talib. So,
Okay.
former corner of that same Denver Broncos team that we were talking about, played a couple other places. I'm going to say Washington. A Dallas native. That's the bigger reason why we're bringing him up.
Yeah.
And it's not really as much him as K104 posted about an hour ago on Facebook that the brother of Aqib Talib, Yaqub Talib,
Okay.
is a suspect in the deadly shooting at a Lancaster youth football game that left coach Michael Hickman dead. Now, Michael Hickman was a coach, I think it was a 9 and under youth football program.
Okay.
And his son was on the team. I don't know the details of what happened other than both of the Talib brothers were supposedly there and shooting.
They were
at
involved
very
somehow.
least, Aqib was with his brother. I don't know if he had the gun, but I'm just saying what I've heard. Now, as far as what K104 is announcing that Yakub is the person of
Interest.
interest that the police are looking for.
Okay.
That they think he's I guess the one who actually shot.
Okay.
Now, Akib has been in several gun-related incidents over the past decade.
Okay.
When he was a pro, even after he retired. So that's kind of just why it ties in. But as far as the fellow that got killed, Michael Hickman, I believe I met him a couple times over the years.
Okay.
I coached youth football for a long time,
Right.
but even still, aside from that, I can't really say that I knew him.
Right.
But I do have a former classmate of mine who knew him and his sister. Unfortunately, his sister was killed 2 years ago,
Yeah.
and luckily her murderer is in prison. And I say luckily, even though it really doesn't help the family that she died, and even if
Right.
that guy's in prison, but at least he went to prison.
Right.
So now it's just awful for that family to have
Right.
lost two of their kids to
So
violence.
Yeah.
And, for this to have happened during a youth football game,
Right.
it just speaks to the stupidity of people.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's a really unfortunate part. Prayers and all the positive healing vibes that we can send to that family and their friends that are dealing with the loss of their friend and family member. The unfortunate thing is that people don't realize. I mean, maybe they do realize. I don't know. I feel like they don't necessarily, but these athletes they come from somewhere. Like they're not just great athletes that were spoon fed and had great backgrounds. They're unfortunately come from impoverished, hard areas, and even though they are the outliers and make it out, it's hard to shake your
What is it? You can get the man out the hood, but you can't get the hood out the man.
right.
That mentality,
And especially
those
when we're
habits.
especially when we're talking like, and I don't mean to put this just say it's like all on black people, but in a black community, they're very much like they don't want to ever be considered sellouts.
A lot of times people get criticized for making it out,
Yeah.
and be perceived as leaving people behind.
Right. And so it's a hard thing to deal with. Even whenever you're talking about athletes, but even if someone like moves out just to a slightly better neighborhood, not even necessarily
There's a lot of jealousy that
Yeah.
exists.
and they in the Hispanic community we always say, oh, you think you're badass now that you got a good paying job or you moved over here. Like it's the same thing. We have these things. I don't think
There's people that oftentimes wish bad upon
Yeah.
people who get a little bit lucky or get
Yeah.
success. And I say get a little bit lucky because I think most of the times when you're making it out of a bad situation,
yeah.
you do need a little bit of luck. That's not to diminish the hard work that people put in,
Right.
but
Yeah, because there's people that work fucking hard. They just never get out of the fucking
the whole,
yeah. So that's where I just kind of wanted to shine the light on. Like, hopefully they didn't actually have any act. Like they didn't do the act, is what I'm saying. Not necessarily that they didn't have anything to do with it. Obviously, they're somehow tied to it, but hopefully they weren't the ones that actually pulled the trigger and killed
Yeah.
this person, because that's really unfortunate, especially when they were in a really privileged situation
Yeah.
at this point.
But R.I.P. Michael Hickman. Like you said, hopefully the family is able to get the peace. And, as far as the Talib family, like you said, hopefully they're not actually the ones that did this, because to have a murder on your head is it's a big deal.
Yeah.
Whether you get away with it or not, it can haunt you, whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah. So speaking of another tragedy, Brittany Griner got 9 years in prison
That's insane, right?
in Russia for oil residue
Less than a gram.
on paraphernalia.
Yeah. Less than a gram. Like, just get a scale out, measure out a gram. If you guys don't know what a gram is, it is so small and minute. Like, and to think that 9 years 9 years is insane. Uh, I'm not a WNBA fan, but I do know that like just this idea is insane. I do know from what I understand the biggest thing is Russia's willing to trade for like a war
What was the
a war
guy's
dog or
title? It
whatever.
was the Master of Death or something. I don't
Yeah.
know. So
He's a guns dealer. Like
yeah, he
sells
one of the biggest guns dealer of the
the
last 25 years,
yeah
and we the United States, not
yeah
me and Johnny,
yeah
um, have had him locked up the last few years and had no plans of extraditing him. But that's what they're trying
yeah.
to
They wanna
switch.
trade as if they're equate to the same thing, and it's unfortunate. I know a lot of people are upset about this like outcome because they think that if she was white, but like when you're looking at like
But
what
here's the unfortunate part. I think people point to a girl who had 18 grams or no, was it 18 grams? Yeah, 18 grams or of weed or something 2 years ago. An American, might have been ounces. I don't know. But
yeah
either way, it was a significantly larger amount
yeah
of actual weed.
yeah
And she had to pay like a small fine, I think like $1,500, and
yeah
they let her out. Like that's
yeah
all.
yeah
Like slap on the wrist, it was
right
nothing, and that just happened 2 years ago. So a lot of people point to that. Now, what they don't realize is like that military guy who had just gotten released by Russia a
yeah
couple months ago, he had been there for years.
right
There's a lot of politically incarcerated folks around the world, and
yeah
specifically in Russia.
yeah
And whenever we look at that, you don't know that it's going on.
yeah.
So people that say, "Oh, if it was LeBron James, he would have got out," nah, he might be tortured over there. To be dead
Yeah,
honest,
there was two things. One, you look at this where I think it was there was a kid that went to like North Korea and he like I don't remember exactly what he did, but I remember he was tortured for like 2 years and came home like malnourished
oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
and because I think he
And
took
then
a
he
picture.
died when he got here,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. He
Or
took like a picture or something that they told him he wasn't supposed to. They tortured him for like 2 years, then they finally sent him over here, and then he died as soon as he gets home. Like, but this is what happens, and in the Brittany Griner situation, like, I get it. It's really unfortunate, but like, y'all got to keep in mind, like, they have somebody living over there that we want, but they don't turn him in. Which is who's the whistleblower?
Snow.
Yeah, fucking Snow is over there. So like that would be more likely of like okay, you could trade Snow for the guy, the war criminal, and that might be more of an equal trade if you were talking about like okay, this is fair. You give us Snow, we'll give this guy over because their equivalency is similar to the same.
as far as crime,
Yeah.
yeah. But you know, so I had a friend who was living in Russia, and I don't want to mention names. I had a friend that was living in Russia.
Is he still there? No.
Nah. And when he was living over there, his apartment caught on fire.
Right.
Okay? They locked him up. They told him that so he was looking at 10 years in prison.
Right.
Okay? And he was back and forth or whatever with the courts, and he was getting pissed off, and they said, "Yeah, the fire that started in your closet, we think you were smoking in your closet, and that's why." It was electrical fire.
Right.
You know, it was an electrical fire, but they were saying,
He was
yeah,
smoking.
you were smoking in your closet, and
Yeah.
that's why our apartment
Yeah.
got burnt. So we're going to send you to prison.
Right.
Then his lawyer, low-key, told him, look, if you bribe the judge, give him $10,000, he'll let you off.
Right.
He's like, is that all that it would take? Like, he was going through this ordeal for like 4 or 5 months.
Right.
And he was like starting to get scared. Man, I'm going to actually go to prison.
Right.
Then he found out that all he needed to do is give the judge $10K. He got that money together,
Right.
gave it to him. Everything was swept under.
Right.
I remember seeing the news clippings, not here, but
Yeah.
the ones from over there.
Yeah.
My friend sent them. He was pissed off. He was like, look at this BS. That they're
Right.
and so it's different.
Yeah.
And yeah, my friend was able to do that, but it's also because he wasn't in the spotlight.
I also say that it's kind of weird in the sense that Brittany was like she was there working for the country. Like
The
it's not
country
even.
loved her.
Yeah, that's the part that I would if I get where you're upset because she was. It's not like she was playing
And it
for a
wasn't her
U.S.
first
team.
time going
Yeah,
there.
like she's literally on a team out there.
The country loved her. The
Yeah.
country loves the WNBA stars that go out there.
Yeah.
But also, you got to know when you're
Yeah.
going into that type of country,
Yeah.
you can't trust
So
the situations
there's
that clearly.
so often I hear people talk about how Americans, when we go to different countries, we're entitled because it's not that we're necessarily entitled. It's just that we're used to the freedoms of the things that we're allowed to do here, and we don't realize that other countries are more based off of their cultural religions or whatever the case is. And I was listening to another radio personality saying like whenever he went to Afghanistan, like literally when you walk in there in bold writing it says that if you spit the gum out, you will go to prison for like you can have gum, but don't spit it out on the side of the street. You can go to prison for that. Like it's in bold writing. And you know, us Americans, yeah, we see writing all over the place. We don't necessarily read everything that we fucking see on walls or whatever.
I was talking with a fella just last week who saw a young person wearing his pants halfway down his butt, right?
Yeah.
So showing his underwear.
Yeah.
And that fella got so mad. He said, in the country I'm from, they'd have murdered him right in the street just for walking like that. And then he pulls back, maybe not murder him, but beat him so he goes to the hospital. You don't walk around like that.
Yeah.
He was mad.
Yeah.
Like, he comes from one of those Middle Eastern countries, so
Yeah.
that part of the world.
Yeah.
But he was so, like, you could see on his face, he kind of wanted to go beat that kid up.
Right.
And it's like, all right, I'm going to let you get away with this because
Right.
you're just saying the story.
Yeah.
If you actually did something,
Yeah.
like, you at least have the sense that you know that you can't do anything like that.
Yeah.
And you can just internalize
Shit,
it.
how many times have you heard stories about people going to Mexico and be like, you know what? I just gave the cops my Jordans and they let me fucking go. Like,
People don't know what happens everywhere, man.
Yeah.
So, look, Brittany Griner, I hope she gets
I hope there's a way that she can get out and that it's not
yeah.
all long and
you
drawn
know,
out.
same thing for all those unjustly arrested prisoners that we have around the world. I'm not saying the ones that are bad people doing bad things over there.
Yeah.
I'm saying the ones unjustly arrested.
Right. Yeah.
Now, just
on.
real quickly, Canelo lost, and he fought well. He lost.
Yeah, so we're switching to boxing, and obviously you guys that have been around know that I am our resident boxing expert when it comes to this. I didn't watch the fight live, but I did watch the playback on it, and some people I did hear some few people say that they thought Canelo should have won on the scorecards, but even me, I was trying to be as non-biased as possible, and I don't remember the exact scorecard that I gave it. But I was probably about 2 or 3 points off from what they said, and I think had Canelo would have needed to win one more round to actually pull it off. Is how close I did score it, and I was actually giving them both like when neither one of them were impressive. I was taking like a point from both of them to kind of keep it as even as possible because I felt like neither one of them deserved the 10 points. So I was giving like, oh, they got like 9-9 or 8-8, depending on like, because there was a few times I think like one of them was like trying to choke the other one, and like they were just kind of doing like silly shit. But when we walking into this fight, I will say that most people were scared for Canelo because he was moving up. I know that's his typical walk around weight, so I was confident that he would be okay, and he was okay. Like talent wise, he was okay. Where he just kind of slacked off is I don't think he was aggressive enough to pull off the win. But we bring all this up to talk about the Triple G third fight, which me personally, I don't feel like we needed a third one. I know a lot of people like these trilogy fights. In my opinion, Canelo won the first 2 fights, so there was no reason for a third. I did say when they did do the draw, I was like, it's either a draw or Canelo wins. When he won the second time, I felt it was still rightfully a win. at this point, Triple G, he's getting a little bit older. I don't think he's got the same fight in him that he
Look,
did.
I think honestly, if Triple G has one great fight left in him, he'll put it out
It'll
this
be
time
this fight, yeah,
to avenge his loss. You know,
yeah.
but I like you said, I don't think he has it. He might still look good for say 6 rounds,
Yeah,
but I think so long as Canelo
is training and doing what he needs to. Yeah,
does what he needs to, Canelo's still the best pound for pound fighter out there right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had a loss,
yeah.
but I think he's the best pound for pound fighter in professional boxing right now.
It's crazy that he's got so many haters. Like, cause I know he's got a fan base that love him, but at some point, I don't know when, but at some point he started to become a little bit of a heel. I guess the more he learns to speak English, the more they dislike him. Uh, and they don't like it. Like it's kind of like being a Cowboys fan. Like, oh, you like Canelo? I don't like you because you're
Yeah, there's always that contrarian those people that just want to go opposite
yeah.
and say, oh yeah, he's not as good as y'all say. Look,
Yeah.
we say he's good. We ain't saying that we sucking his, you know,
Right.
like yeah, but everyone else does. Well, don't lump me in with them. Like I'm just saying the guy's a good fighter. He's the best one today,
Yeah.
not of all time.
Right.
Is he up there with some of them?
And what I said immediately after that loss was he'll be better for that loss than not have losing. Meaning, he learns from his fights. He learned from that fight what he's going to need to do to adjust and be better.
He actually loves boxing.
Yeah.
Like he's not doing it just for a paycheck.
Right.
He's doing it because he loves the sport.
Yeah.
He's trying to get better, and there's a difference.
And
in
he wants
that.
to please his fans in the sense that like he just came off a loss, and a lot of people would argue Triple G is not the fighter you want to do a bounce back fight.
Yeah,
He's coming like that's not, and even me, like I've said, he was closely contested the first time around, but it was a draw if you want to say it was a draw, or he won. The second time he beat him by the points the way he was going to. This third time around, he's still gonna probably have to beat him by the points. You're gonna have to see him outbox a slugger. And the thing is, if you watch that, Canelo's got power, but his power does not bother Triple G on a normal basis. Now,
because Triple G can take a hit. Like,
now,
that's the big thing.
as we've said, he's getting older, so maybe this time around, maybe he doesn't because he's got almost 10 years on Canelo, I believe.
Yeah.
So, as we were saying in the football, Father Time comes along, and eventually, I mean, they both got a puncher's chance. But yeah, that's where we're standing on this. We can move on from it.
Yeah, so we're gonna go ahead and skip the Aaron Rodgers talk, even though I love bashing him and say, look,
I can make this real quick. The only thing I wanted to mention about it was that they were asking him, does he feel that right now his backup is similar to where he was whenever he took over for Brett Favre. And his thing was like, I don't know if the media feels that way. I know like at some point it either starts clicking or it doesn't, but I can't say that. Like, you know, I can see some similarities, but at the same time, like I don't feel it's the same. I personally thought it was like, oh, that's a really nice thing for him to say because he wasn't bashing the what's his name, something Love. He wasn't bashing him. He just kind of was like, if he feel like that is, I don't think it is, but if he thinks so, like, who am I to say? I don't remember it that way.
yeah. And as far as my take on him, I didn't care about that statement. Either way,
Yeah,
it was more what caught me was his recent comments about being on shrooms.
ayahuasca. Yeah,
And my problem with it isn't that he does it. It's how he's portrayed. Because I
Yeah.
promise you, if he was a black quarterback saying that,
yeah.
the narrative would have been so different.
They'd be pissed off. Yeah,
And I hate that.
I could give you that. My take on that, as far as like me personally, I don't see a problem with him doing it either. You're right. If it was Dak saying the same thing, people would have a field day with how Dak shouldn't be in the NFL or he needs more drug tests or whatever the case is. I was just like I said. For me, I was just surprised that he was talking because he's a baby. Like as you point out, he cries about, oh, they drafted his replacement already. He was upset when this guy comes along. So the fact that that's why I was impressed by it. Like he wasn't bashing him. But that's all we have to really say about that. We can
Yeah,
move on.
and we'll talk about him more probably next week when we
Yeah.
start talking about quarterbacks.
Yeah.
But now, the creme de la creme.
Okay.
What happened this offseason? Where you're standing with your thoughts on the Cowboys and
Oh, you want the
why?
big announcement? That's what you
So,
want?
so Amari Cooper is no longer a Dallas Cowboys. I think the last time
Yeah.
we talked to these folks, he was still a major part of this team.
Yes, yes, yes.
So not only has Amari Cooper left the Cowboys, Juan Valdespino has also left the Cowboys.
Yes.
Expand on that for me, please.
So, guys, I have been a Cowboys diehard fan for the better part of 30 years. Growing up, they were at their peak of that 90s decade. This is the Cowboys Super Bowl. This is what we were going through. So when I started getting into football, that's where they were. But after such many ups and downs, preseason or was it
Off-season moves.
postseason games that were like we got a shot, we're close, and I just finally got to a point where Jerry the straw that broke the camel's back was getting rid of Amari Cooper, and before you guys jumped down my back about like that was something that they should have done, I just want to point out, as I said, there's a bias against the Dallas Cowboys that when Amari was here, they were not calling him a top tier wide receiver.
Nope.
Now he is no longer a Dallas Cowboys. Are they not putting him in the top 10?
They're talking about him being the 10th best wide receiver in the NFL.
Yes. So if he's the top 10 now, what makes the difference?
Why the hell wasn't he considered that last year when he was with the Cowboys?
Yeah. And because I believe the criticism for him was if he's a number one wide receiver, why didn't he hit? How many yards did he have? Do you remember?
Why didn't he get 1,000?
Yeah, yeah, because he was at like 900 and something. Like he
Yeah.
was just shy of hitting the 1,000. But that point being that okay, I can rock with you if this is what you want to talk with. The straw was that the fact they got rid of him. I understand you need to move on. You're looking at better talent. I get that too. But when you're going to tell me that CeeDee Lamb is ready to be the number one, that's where I was like, okay, you're kind of crazy. Me and you off the air had that conversation. I was like, CeeDee's got one more year underneath a veteran, if not two, before I would be willing to say, okay, he's ready to be that number one. And that's just him working and proving to be there. Now, I heard Dak say he's just really good. He just walks underneath those balls and catches them, whatever the case is. But when we're talking about Amari Cooper, what did we trade for him?
2 number ones.
2 number one draft picks. And this was how many years ago?
3?
3 years ago?
Yeah, 2018.
Okay. 3 years ago, we said he was worth 2 number one draft picks, right? Fast forward to this season. What did we get rid of him for?
So after, in that time period, right?
Yeah, yes.
3.5 years with the Cowboys.
Uh-huh.
He had 3 seasons where he eclipsed 1,000 yards, and last season he still had 12.7 yards per reception,
Okay.
and only finished with 865 yards. Right?
Okay. Only 800.
865.
Yeah.
But what we have to recognize is the Cowboys had the number one offense in the NFL.
Right.
In what? In the NFL.
Right.
The number one offense in the NFL.
Right.
And you criticize our number one receiver,
Right.
who had 865 yards.
Right.
And he missed a few games because of COVID,
Right.
right?
Yep,
So
yep.
he did. So it wasn't like he played every game because he had COVID,
Right.
right? So that said, he had 68 receptions, 865 yards.
Right.
And last year, people were saying he's not a true number one.
Right.
You had the number one offense,
Right.
and they were criticizing him.
And
Now he goes to Cleveland,
yeah.
and they're saying he's the 10th best wide receiver in the league.
Yes. And also to kind of throw it back to the whole Zeke argument, number one offense.
Number
And-
one offense.
And you're going to say Zeke is no longer what he used to be.
Yeah, the Cowboys had the number 1 passing game
Right.
and the number 1 offense,
Yes. And
and
the number 4 rushing.
he was our best receiver.
Yeah.
And
So all that to say.
so this is great right here. Just pause. Think about this.
Okay.
Last year, number 1 offense,
Uh-huh.
right? Number 4 rushing game.
Yes.
Zeke was 7th in the league in rushing yards.
Yeah.
Amari had 865 receiving yards. Dak was, I think, 7th in passing yards, 6th or 7th in passing yards.
Right.
And all that to say, and Dak sucks, Amari sucks, Zeke sucks.
Yep.
And our offensive coordinator sucks.
Yes.
I'm with that one.
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of ROC.
Yeah.
But how is all that stuff true?
Oh, don't forget they were the best offense of the Cowboys history too.
Yeah, but how is all that stuff
Most
true?
scoring of all time for them.
How is it true that our quarterback sucks,
Yeah.
our wide receiver sucks,
Yes.
and our running game sucks,
Yes.
and we had the number 1 offense in the league?
Yes. Back to early in the podcast where we said in sports we have to go off the facts of what the scores are.
What the data says.
Yes. We're going off yards. We're going off the work that is being produced, the stops, the goes, like everything that makes a game, the wins, the losses. Those are definite numbers in when you're going. So what are you grading them to say that they all suck? By what standards? By a bunch of players that like, well, Brady is a better quarterback. How? Because he's got old Super Bowls that we're not.
And when they went toe-to-toe, who won that duel?
Right.
Brady won the game, but who had the better stats?
Right.
Was he or Dak? Everyone knows that.
Yeah.
Okay, so Dak won the duel, right?
Right.
Okay, so how's Brady better?
Right.
Well,
So So you get where we're going, right? You understand where I'm going. So here's my thing. I will stand and die on this hill. Jerry's everything right with the team. He is everything wrong with the team. I, after 30 years, have to say I can no longer stand by with this 5th round draft trade.
you heard right. They traded Amari Cooper, whom they gave up 2 number 1s for, and who he gave them in his 4 years 3 1,000-yard rush receiving seasons, and helped tremendously to contribute to the number 1 overall offense in the NFL.
Right. And let's just to throw in more to this fire is the fact that they said Gallup was a suffice to go to the number 2 spot.
Backup. So let's touch on that. And one thing that we were talking about just before we got on air.
Yeah.
You let go of your number 1
Yeah.
because you think that your number 2 is better.
Yeah.
That was the logic that they used.
Yeah. You know what?
So-
That reminds me of another part. Go ahead.
So they used that logic and they thought, okay, we really want to keep our number 3. Our number
Right.
3 is Michael Gallup.
Right.
The same Michael Gallup who's injured,
Yes.
who's not starting the season and can miss probably 6 games.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
yeah.
what the talk is right now.
Right.
So you trade Amari Cooper for a 5th round pick because you think Michael Gallup is gonna do what Amari did, even though he's gonna miss 6 games.
Right. You didn't. Think
I
he was
equated this to the Cowboys in the 90s, where the Dallas Cowboys had Alvin Harper, Jimmy Smith, and Michael Irvin at one point.
Yeah.
Alvin Harper's a nice little piece, right?
Yeah.
He was a good receiver. Jimmy Smith was probably the best Jacksonville Jaguar receiver of all time.
Okay.
Okay? I mean, he was a baller.
Yeah.
He was really good for them. We didn't look at them two and say, you know what? These guys are going to be nice. Let's get rid of Michael Irvin.
Right.
No. The Cowboys back then
Yeah.
said, yeah, Michael's our best receiver. To hell with Alvin Harper. You go get your money elsewhere.
Right.
To hell with you, Jimmy Smith. You go somewhere else
Right.
because you ain't
Because
superseding
yeah.
Michael Irvin.
Because the problem with they're saying, well, we can't keep Cooper because we just paid Zeke, we just paid Dak. He's just going to cost too much. But if I had to take, I would have cut 3, maybe even 4 out of our receiving core.
Here's the thing. Michael Gallup is nice,
Yeah.
but you drafted CeeDee Lamb to replace him
Yeah.
because you knew his contract was coming up.
Right.
So now if you're cutting Amari because of your pettiness,
Yes.
then I understand it a lot better. But you can't cut Amari, you can't trade Amari and tell me that you're doing it and the team is better off for it.
Right.
Especially when all you got is a 5th for him.
And especially when you didn't do any offseason trades that were like, you know what? That's a good fucking pickup.
Yeah, it's not like you said, hey, not only are we going to get rid of him, we're going to go ahead and sign Odell Beckham Jr., who
Yeah.
even though he's hurt too, he'll pick up the slack for him.
Yeah.
You didn't do that.
Where you could get him for a league minimum for just one season, where you don't have to because then I could say, okay, salary cap. If we're gonna get rid of Amari, you could pick up.
Okay,
this guy.
I guess I can see the angles.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah,
I still don't necessarily like it, but at least you got a major talent who was
Yeah.
balling last year before he got injured.
And people would still take him serious. It's like we need to worry about him because if he goes off, he's gonna go off.
But right now, you're left with CeeDee Lamb and nobody.
Yeah.
Now, I argue that as a whole, you shouldn't pay receivers as much
Right.
because they're a lot easier to come by.
Yes.
But you already had Amari under contract.
Right.
So
Yeah, we're still paying him. Just
Yeah.
because they traded him does not mean that he's not still on our salary cap.
So he still affects your books,
Yeah.
right? So you already had Amari
Yeah.
under contract. So that's just what it is.
Yeah.
His costs are already tied into your futures.
Right.
So with that said, you have Amari and CeeDee Lamb.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about the fact that Michael Gallup is hurt
Right.
because you got 2 quality NFL starters that put people on notice.
Right.
Well, when you get rid of one of them and you ain't got nobody behind them
You know what it reminds me?
because you let go of Cedric Wilson too, who balled last year.
Right. Who was it? Was it Julio and Sanu that were on the same team?
Julio, Brown, and
Oh, was it Brown? Someone was on Sanu was the number 2
2 or 3 or something.
to one of them, and I remember I was like, oh, Sanu moving to number 1 might be the good look. I was proven fucking wrong with him that he was not a number 1.
Just look at Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
You had what was his name? You had Antonio Brown and
Yeah.
Juju Smith.
Yeah, he was
You
another
had
one.
Juju Smith, and
Yeah.
you were like, okay, well, I guess if Antonio leaves, Juju Smith. No,
No, he wasn't.
Juju was a great number 2.
Yeah. Also, throwback to
Now
Cowboys.
we do think CD is good enough to be a 1.
Yeah.
That's the truth.
Yeah.
But that said, you have 1A and 1B. You don't need to say, hey, let's go with a C guy instead.
Yeah.
Because Michael Gallup is a C guy. He
Yeah.
is not a 1 anything.
Yeah. A Gallup is likened to Terrence Williams a few years ago whenever he was
You can replace Michael Gallup in the draft with a 3rd or 4th round pick any given year.
Yeah. So, yeah, this moving on from Amari, I don't have a problem with moving on from Amari if you're making the right adjustments
It's moving on from Amari for a 5th.
for a 5th. You didn't even a
When
third.
you
At
know-
very
look.
if you argued with me saying look, he's just not he's not worth 2 number 1s anymore. I'll give you. If you want to argue, he's aging. He's not going to be worth
All
it
he
in the
can
next
get
2
is
years.
2 threes.
Yeah.
Okay. But he's still only played in the league 7 years.
Yeah.
And I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong. Wide receivers, they go nowadays 10,
Right.
12, 14 years.
Yeah. So I would gladly say, give me at least 1-3. At least 1-3. If someone was
And I
gonna
would have
play,
still been pissed about that.
but it would make it's a lot more sense because if you're gonna argue he's aging, we know that he's
And
gonna.
here's the other thing. Not only did they trade Amari for a fifth,
Yes.
but you traded Amari for a fifth
Arguing
when your next number 2
yeah.
is freaking injured.
Yes.
And
Arguing that he's a valid.
and your number 3 you'd not signed
Yeah.
because he goes to Miami.
Right.
So the guy who you were planning on moving up to 2, is injured. The
Yeah.
guy who you had at number 3 is gone.
And they drafted a couple rookies this year, right? Like receivers?
Yeah.
And didn't one of them already get injured?
Yeah.
To where,
Yeah.
so
But
no, my point is, so your contingency plan of like, even if Gallup's not going to be here, you drafted a guy who got hurt. That's so going back to Zeke, because what's going to happen because they were talking shit about him, we're going to see him start out strong with some good running, and then he's going to fall off as his receivers start to come back, because guess what? He doesn't have to fucking run anymore. And
This is gonna the beginning of the year, they're gonna feed Zeke.
Yep.
So for those of you who are gonna say, yeah, well, Zeke ain't the same, listen up closely right here.
Yep.
The Cowboys' smart game plan to start the season is gonna be give Zeke the ball.
Yep.
Because you don't have receivers, right?
Yep. So Zeke and Tony Pollard are up. They're going to be running the shit
So
out
they're
of them.
going to run the ball. Well, when Gallup comes back and Washington comes back and the backup wide receivers are now flowing with Dak, well, guess what's going to happen?
Those numbers are going to drop hard.
The run game is going to go down because they're going to say, oh, we can pass now.
Yeah.
So let's pass and save these running backs for the end of the year.
Yep.
So when they do that, guess what? Zeke is going to go from getting 18, 19 carries to 14, 15 carries. And you're going to be like, wow, his numbers have really dropped. I can't believe he went from getting 95 yards a game to only getting 80 yards a game.
Yeah.
That's a big drop.
Yeah.
And you're going to say it's because he sucks. But we're telling you right now,
Yep.
it's because once the passing game gets going, the run game's going to slow down because they're going to be passing more.
Yeah.
The yards are still going to be there for the team,
Yep.
but they're going to be coming through the air.
Yep.
So don't be an idiot. Don't be a stupid.
Right.
And think, oh, this means the running game sucks. No, it means the team shifted gears and said, hey, we got receivers that can catch now.
And also with that, let's not forget, they're going to game plan because they're going to know that our receiving core's not there. So even if he doesn't produce as great runs, because why? We know they can't fucking throw it. So they're going to fucking stop it. But all that to say, again, this horrible trade to get rid of Cooper, I have to walk away. So if you're curious what team I am running with for this season,
dun, 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 dun.
It is the one and only Kansas City. And no, it's not because I'm from St. Louis and it's a Missouri thing. It's because Mahomes, I believe, is the best quarterback in the league.
He is your homie.
And because of that, I'm running with Mahomes. I'm running with Kansas City this year. They will be the team I'm going to be rooting for.
And they were formerly the Dallas Texans.
But with all that being said, anything else you want to touch on?
Yeah, Kyle, get better at your job.
Yes, this stopping in the middle of the podcast, like for weird announcements that we don't care about.
That's some BS Richard Montgomery stuff.
But with that being said, it is great to be back on the podcast. The champs, that's who we are.
That's who we is. You can follow me on the Twitter at RudyV1982.
You can follow me on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram at SleepyJ, SLEEP_E_J. Appreciate you guys for coming back for another season. In the meantime, chill.
And just as an FYI, next week we're going to start talking about the top 11 quarterbacks of the NFL. Okay. And if you don't understand why we're going 11, it's because you're a dummy.
With that being said, take it easy.
Peace.